This is truly an emotional moment for me. And I'm not one who hides his emotions in his sleeves. Very often my emotions come out to the fore, and I think this is going to be one such evening in my life. So where do I begin? For those of you who have a little penchant for music, where do I begin is that famous song from the movie Love Story, which was sung by Andy Williams. So as I was thinking about what to say, I said, where do I begin? I think I should first begin by acknowledging that I'm here because of the sacrifices of my own parents. My father and mother didn't belong to a wealthy family. We had some lands, but our lands were all taken away in the agricultural stealing laws. And my grandfather said that we will not contest the rights of the tillers because they were really the people who represented the soil. And so the family moved on and tried to find alternative means. That's how someone became a lawyer, somebody became a doctor. But much before that, around the last few years of the 19th century, my great-great-grandmother, who lived in a small village in what is now Rajguru Nagar, found that her husband had decided to marry for a second time, which was then permissible under our law. So she took 9 children under her belt, mortgaged her jewelry, and brought them to Pune to chart a new course of life for the children of the family. So on the strength of that one woman who mortgaged her jewelry came the first doctor in our family who became an FRCS in those days, the first doctor who became an MRCP, my own father's uncle who was a leading lawyer in Pune. And that's how really the family disassociated itself, so to speak, from its landed tradition into the more intellectual traditions and professions. Talking of my own parents, they were not people born to wealth. My parents lived in a small chawl in Dadar by the name of Madhavadi. And my mother would carry, I was not born, but my parents told me the story. And my mother would carry clothes on her head and with a bucket in the hand to the nearest water tap when there was no water to wash the clothes of everyone in the family and relatives who would be visiting in large numbers from Pune and beyond to Mumbai. And she would tell me a story of how when my father became a lawyer, by the first train from Solapur, from the overnight mail from Pune, from various parts of Maharashtra, the first train would arrive at about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock at what was then BT. And with that would come the first lot of clients to our house. So my mother would first and foremost serve them at 5:30 in the morning, a cup of tea. And that's when the first few briefs would be gathered at home. But our parents had the vision of sending both my sister, who is here, and me to an English medium school. To go to an English medium school was something very unique in our family because we were the first 2 in the family to go to an English school. My parents started learning English from standard 7, but they learned a great deal of English. And when my father was asked, you had a penchant for English, when did you study at the University of Oxford? He would say, my Oxford was Nutan Marathi Vidyalaya in Pune. He never had the benefit of a foreign education, which he gave us. But he was a very strict man. When I passed my law, he was still in office and he said that I will not allow you to enter a court so long as I'm a judge of the Supreme Court. And he made that statement even without asking me before the bar of the Allahabad High Court. I had accompanied my parents as a young student, and he made that announcement suddenly at the Allahabad High Court. Now, whether I liked it or not, I had to abide by it. But he told me one thing. He said, look, I just checked up with my bank account and I have about 5,25,000 in my Provident Fund account, my GPF. It's all yours to take abroad and study because I know you will not waste this and that you will use this and put it to good use. Fortunately, I didn't have to draw on it, but those were the kind of values which I learned from my parents. So I began my practice at a time when my father had retired. There was an enormous amount of goodwill, but there was goodwill either to be won or to be lost. So I must begin this little presentation. I hope you'll not mind my being so personal by paying a tribute to my own parents, because of whom I think I can be addressing you this evening. But apart from that, I am very touched by the large presence of members of the bar and of my own colleagues or judges who mentored me, who are present here in such abundant number this evening. I hope I'll not embarrass you by referring to you. It's conventional not to refer to those who are present, but I'll break that tradition because I owe a debt of gratitude to all of you. So Justice Sujata Manohar, I learned from you the kind of dignity which you brought to your office as a judge. If there's one thing that you learned, it was the sense of being firm yet dignified in the court. Justice Hemant Gokhale, you are here with Minatai. We shared adjoining chambers just next to the central court, and not a day went by in the evening when Justice Gokhale wouldn't come by into my chamber, give me a pat on the back, and even share his favorite Treptin biscuits for me to have better proteins. Justice Sam Variava is here. I appeared before you in this very court when you would be ferociously writing orders in your own handwriting as opposed to dictating them to your stenographer, because you were one of those judges who prided precision in all the work that you did. And then after you wrote those orders and the brief would be just flung at us by the court master, the Shirisdar, you would try and take down what you had written in your own hand. Some more eminent than the others, but all in the same tradition of the cause of compassion and justice. I came to the Bombay High Court after a stint in the Supreme Court, and the redoubtable Mr. Jangu Gagrat, I was planning to migrate to Mumbai from Delhi. The redoubtable Mr. Jangu Gagrat, I walked up to him and asked him whether I should continue to work in the Supreme Court and in the Bombay High Court. And he said to me, he says, if you want to earn a lot of money, please continue to be a lawyer in the Supreme Court. But if you want to learn the law, please come to Mumbai. I'm not sure that the lawyers and judges in Delhi would really agree to this today. But I made the choice and I came here and I joined the chambers of Mr. Temtan Nandhyarujana. My first brief was to mention before Justice Sujata Manohar in the corner court on the ground floor, I had a PhD from Harvard in my hand, and I thought that for mentioning that brief for an early date, I will get a sizable fee. So the solicitor from Mullah and Mullahs told me, I asked him, how much do you charge for this kind of a docket? So he said, it's your first brief, so you can mark your docket as you want to mark it. So I said, but please tell me, because I'm not quite sure about what I should be marking. So he says, well, for this kind of a brief, you normally mark a fee of 5 guineas. But since it's your first brief, I don't mind increasing it to 7. So that was a reminder that Harvard PhD under your belt aside, you're worth 7 guineas in a court in Bombay, as it then was. But I joined the chambers of Mr. Nandhyarujana. I first went to him and called him sir. And he said, look, there are no sirs in the legal profession because we are all equals. And from that day, I started calling him Temtan. Temtan was my senior, my mentor, and my guide. But that represented a sense of equality at the bar. I can't say that my juniors called me that. My juniors all called me sir, and they still call me sir. But there was something about this tradition about being equals in the chamber, of being equals intellectually and being involved in this common endeavor to find principle and the balance of justice. The second point, apart from the ability to write, that I want to emphasize is the ability to assimilate diverse strands of thought and expression. We are all judges in this global metropolis that is Mumbai. I think it is our respect for the beliefs of others who do not believe as we are. I believe that our respect for others who do not think as we think, our belief for others who don't dress as we dress, that sense of belief sustains the inclusion and the diversity of our society. And that sense of inclusion and diversity in our society is a cause of its stability, tranquility, and its ability to sustain constitutional values in the future. One of the lessons which I have learned during my own 22 years on this side of the bench is that you're constantly judging the lives of others. But I try to judge, which I'm duty bound to do, without being judgmental. Now, it's a very thin line which you ask yourselves. How do I judge without being judgmental? Of course, we are duty bound to judge because that's our duty and our oath under the Constitution. But at the same time, when they were sitting together, husband and wife, and they had decided to write a suicide note and go to the nearest railway line and allow a passing train to end their lives. And she says that they had just written out the note and they were wondering what time was the best time to leave their home when a phone call came. So happened that the phone call was from me. And I told her that I was just sitting on the committee of judges to review judgments. And your judgments have been rated as A+. So it's just a matter of a short time that you will now be moving from that side to this side. And she writes in her autobiography that that little phone call was perhaps a message to her that, well, the time had yet not come and the time was yet not right. So she says we tore up that letter, put it in the waste paper basket, and then continued to see another day. I'm sharing this with all of you because at the end of it all, I think the worth of the lives which we lead depends upon whether we leave the world a slightly better place to live in, if this indeed were the last day of our life. A very beautiful book written by a professor at Stanford, which is called The Last Lecture. And in the last lecture, the very distinguished professor who was detected to have a terminal ailment says, we cannot ever change the hand that we are dealt with, but we can certainly change the way we play the hand. So at the end of it all, really, I think it's for us to decide, how do we as judges leave the world a slightly better place to live in, if this indeed were to be the last day, which is the motto with which I try and lead my life every day. So I began by saying that this is an exceptionally emotional moment for me today. I took a little more time than I should have, but you will pardon the lapse of someone who owes everything indeed to this High Court and to this High Court alone. Thank you very much.